Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I want to welcome you on behalf of the Fishtown District for another in our series of virtual stakeholders meetings, where again, we're trying to bring people and resources to you to help get through this and to help find ways for our businesses to thrive. And we're certainly at a critical period where a corridor such as ours, which really has a very vibrant and is defined by in many ways by our bar and restaurant scene, we're getting to the point where some sort of reopening needs to occur. And we're thrilled today to have on very zealous advocates, not just for us, but for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We have John Longstreet, President and CEO, and also Ben Fileccia, who's Director of Operations and Strategy for the Philadelphia region for the Pennsylvania Restaurant&Lodging Association. So gentlemen, I'm going to turn it over to you so that you can kind of fill us in on what's going on a state level and what we can do here.
You bet. Hey, thank you, Mark. Thanks for having me today. I appreciate the opportunity to be with this group. Obviously, Philadelphia is extremely important to our state and to the Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association. And let me ask, can you hear me okay? I'm having a little bit of internet challenge on my end. Is it okay?
We can hear you fine.
Okay, good, great. And that's why we have Ben there full time. And Ben, as many of you know, is a lifelong Philadelphia restaurateur prior to deciding that this would be a good career change for him to join us 2 years ago. So we're excited about that. Our goal, and I'm going to try to make this brief and then answer questions you might have that about things I don't talk about. Our goal throughout this has been to first to help team members who were displaced through this, and now there's about 85% of the restaurant employees statewide are on furlough right now. And then secondly, and equally important, is to make sure that the businesses could survive this, so people had a place to work when they came back. So we immediately set up, the first thing we needed to do is set up an information resource because people didn't know what was going on. They didn't understand how to deal with it. They didn't understand the orders that were coming down. And a lot of them were confusing because literally people were making it up as they go at every level because they've never been through this before. So our job was to decipher and get that out. We started with the daily coronavirus update that PRLA publishes. If you're not getting that, please let me or Ben know, or Mark, and we'll get you on the mailing list. It's for anybody in the industry, restaurant or hotel, regardless of membership in PRLA. The other thing we did is we suspended all dues collections, and anybody who we'd already sent invoices to, we sent them a letter and said, don't pay us, keep the money because you're going to need cash flow to get through this. So essentially everyone became a member of PRLA and will be throughout this crisis. And then we started working through, and the way to get resources to businesses was through legislation. We worked with our partners at the National Restaurant Association, the American Hotel and Lodging Association, in getting the CARES 3 Act passed, which included the PPP, which looked like a good idea when it came out. Many of you have probably been the beneficiaries of the Paycheck Protection Program through the SBA, but the provisions of it didn't line up with how severe the virus was. So there are some fixes underway to that program, some of which will help people who recently got PPP money and some of which may be too late for them. I could talk a little bit more about that later if we want to. And then many other pieces of legislation. There's a bill right now that would be a part of so-called COVID-4. You've seen what the House came out with, but there's going to be another version of it when the Senate goes to work on it this week that would include a restaurant relief and recovery fund that is specific to the restaurants and particularly small restaurants, which is a total grant program. It's a $240 billion grant program to ensure that you can get access to money to get inventory and all the things you need to get up and running again. So the Paycheck Protection Program has 5 provisions that'll probably get adjusted that'll make it work better for you. Restaurant relief and recovery fund is really important. Also at the federal level, some work to try to get insurers to pay out on business interruption policies. Those are probably the biggest things that are happening at that level. But I'd like to focus more on talking about the reopening because I think that's where everybody is now, is how do we get reopened? What's it going to look like? There's really, when you talk about outdoor dining, and let me start with that, there's 3 phases to getting outdoor dining up and running. And 3 entirely different groups that we're working with. The first is the to get outdoor dining approved in the yellow phase, which it currently is not. As you may know, for restaurants, there's virtually no change in the yellow phase versus the red phase. They're approved as essential businesses for takeout and delivery only. We believe that a logical first step is to get outdoor dining approved in yellow. Obviously, we'd like to get all dining approved, but that's not going to happen. So there's been a number of efforts to try to get that done. There's some efforts right now to get it done legislatively. There's a bill from Representative Everett that has made it out of committee in the House that will be dropped probably tomorrow, that essentially forces the governor to begin outdoor dining this coming weekend. I'm sorry, it's not necessarily this coming weekend, it's immediately upon passage, which probably would be in 10 days, 2 weeks. If that gets passed by the House and by the Senate, it will be almost a strict party line vote. There'll be a handful of Democrats that'll vote for it, and that will be vetoed by the governor. And the reason it'll be vetoed is the governor has said all along that he has total authority in a crisis like this, an emergency, to make the decisions as to how things would be done. He's been challenged in court, and both the Pennsylvania Supreme Court have sustained his contention that he has the sole authority to make decisions in this case. The legislature passed a bill to take control of the Pennsylvania legislature, both houses passed a bill to take control of the reopening process. The governor vetoed it, and it's veto proof. There's no, I'm sorry, it's not veto proof. There's not enough votes to override a veto. The legislature passed a bill to require the governor to form a committee of legislators to advise him on reopening. He vetoed that, and it could not be overridden. Because of his stance that he has the sole authority to do that, he has to veto anything like that, even if he agrees with it, even if he agrees that we should have outdoor dining in the yellow phase, which, by the way, he does agree. We, PRLA and our industry is the only business group, according to my friend Gene Barr, who runs the Pennsylvania Chamber, and many other association CEOs that run other business associations like realtors, builders, road builders. Supposedly, we're the only one that has a dialogue with the governor right now. And we have talked with the governor. We had our board chairman, Bill Kowaleski, who some of you know, the founder of Victory Brewing Group, CEO Mike Axiotis, Lehigh Valley Restaurant Group, and I met with the governor and his key team members that are working on the reopening. He agreed that there should be outdoor dining in the yellow, and he instructed his his general counsel, Greg Schwab, to work with us on developing standards and getting open for outdoor dining in yellow. Now, their timeline and our timeline are different. They're talking about middle of June. We're talking about Memorial Day. Our last conversation, and this is not for publication, and it wasn't agreed on yet, we're pushing for June as a compromise for June 4th, which would be the Thursday prior to that weekend, first full weekend of June. At the same time, this legislation is running that would require him to do it, which is somewhat problematic in the relationship because we have to support that. As I pointed out to Greg when he said, could we back off of it? I said, we can't because it's our industry. So there's a little bit of a push-pull there, but we still have a very good dialogue. That we're working on plans. He's working on plans to open for outdoor dining in the yellow phase. And the plans that they're working from right now are the Ohio reopening plans. They reopened for outdoor dining last Friday, and they opened for indoor dining this Friday. That's for outdoor and indoor, which makes it simpler. We recommended they look at the Ohio plan for a couple of reasons. One, for that reason, and then we would be set for our green standards too for when we reopen. And then secondly, because frankly, they're probably the most reasonable standards that we've looked at. And we've looked at maybe 20 states. 30 states have reopening plans now. Pennsylvania does not. And so They're looking at those and supposedly going to draft some recommendations by Wednesday, which they said that they would give us a chance to review and provide feedback on. So that's the kind of the nature of what's happening on that front. So that's the first front, is you have to get yellow dining approved in yellow. I think we've had good dialogue so far. We've been firm, but we've been reasonable, and I think they appreciate that. The second thing that would have to happen for many restaurants, if not most, is the PLCB would have to allow an expansion of premises so that you could serve alcohol in the expanded, well, I'm talking about expanding premises outside now. You guys have a great letter that you put together for the Philadelphia City Council. That's the first part of expansion of premises is local zoning, because they have the first whack at it. And then and you can expand premises without the PLCB to serve alcohol, but you'll want to serve alcohol. So we've worked with the PLCB already, both with Sam Robinson, who's the deputy chief of staff to the governor and the liaison to the PLCB, the staff at the PLCB, who we work very closely with, and Mike Negra, who's one of the board members of the PLCB. All of those folks understand that we want expedited expansion of premises. Normally you can get them, but it takes at least 30 days. You have to post it and all this kind of stuff. We want it to be essentially immediately. We can get that done, and the governor's team has indicated that they don't see any red flags there yet, to the degree that they have something to do with it, which they have a lot to do with it. So those are the three things that have to happen: local zoning, which you're working on, and Ben and his counterpart, well, in our office, Melissa Bova, who's our VP of Government Affairs, very good at that, very well connected in Philadelphia as well. We have a very strong lobbyist in Philadelphia too, to assist as necessary. But I think you're going to find that the city's going to want to work with you in that regard. But they need the governor to approve the outdoor dining in yellow first, which we believe is, well, we know it's forthcoming, we just don't know the timing. And then you'd like to have the PLCB on board to quickly allow you an expansion of premises so you can serve drinks there. So that's what's happening in the yellow phase. The green phase has not been defined yet, what actually happens when you get there. And it also hasn't been defined how you get there. There's been some talk that no county would go to green until the whole state goes to yellow. The governor's office said that's not correct. We're going to take it county by county, and when the time is right and certain standards are met, we'll take it to green phase. What happens in restaurants in green phase has not been defined. It's not going to be full opening. There's no question about that. And that's why we want to work with them on what the opening standards are as to how restaurants can reopen. Are they going to be based on social distancing? They're going to be based on capacities? Are there going to be required reservations? Those kind of things we're working through. I think if you don't have the Ohio standards, I'll send them to you. Ben might have them handy. He can send them to you. I have them right here. You can take a look at those. And we, of course, want feedback on that too, because we're going to start talking with them about it. There's no guarantee that the administration is going to say, oh yeah, we love Ohio, we'll do it just the way they're doing it. My guess is they won't, but it's a starting point, and then we have to sort of negotiate ways to allow restaurants to open safe, but let them open sensibly as well as safely. And our pitch has been, look, we have the subject matter experts that are a part of our association, and we can add some practicality to the safety that you guys know, the health part of it. And they've been wide open to that concept so far. So that's kind of an overview of where we are today on the reopening, just touching on some of the resources like the PPP, and then try to answer any questions on anything that you want to talk about relative to this.
Thank you, John. And I have a couple quick questions, and I know that our attendees will have some. And I know we have Representative Isaacson who joined the call. Welcome, Mary. And I believe Matthew Franchak from Senator Farnese's office is also on the call. So you mentioned about the Representative Everett's bills. I think it was House Bill 2506 and 2513. Can you kind of tell us what we can expect to happen through the House and the Senate? Also what the bills are, and where do we expect the governor to go with them?
Generally, one of them allows for dining in the yellow phase, outdoor dining in the yellow phase. And the second one allows for indoor dining at 50% during the yellow phase. As I mentioned earlier, both of those bills are going to be considered by the House over the next couple of days, I believe. And since we have an expert on the line, she might correct me on that, but I believe that's going to happen over the next couple of days. I suspect they'll pass the House and they'll go over to the Senate. I don't know that they'll pass the Senate, but I believe they probably will. I think the vote will be mostly party line, definitely on the one that allows for 50% dining in the yellow phase, indoor dining. I think the outdoor one, there'll be some bleed over, but probably not much. And as I said, even though the governor has indicated to us very definitively that he believes that outdoor dining in the yellow phase is good, and he's working on a plan to get that done, I believe he's going to feel he has to veto these because of the fact that they question the authority of the governor to manage through this emergency crisis, which he has repeatedly said that he has the sole authority to, and that's been sustained by the courts. So that's the reason why I think that's going to happen, and I think that's what's going to happen with the two bills. There's also a letter that's being circulated today from House Democrats to the governor, and I haven't looked at the text of it yet, but I believe it's asking him to approve outdoor dining in yellow by this weekend, which would be challenging to get standards written. You know, we've recommended some standards thus far. As I told you, we put several documents in their hands, and they've been very willing to work with us on them. And we could certainly get together and get the word out through our sources to restaurants. But I think that they want to be a bit more deliberate about this and take more time on the standards. So, but that letter, I think, is being circulated today. And that's not legislation. It's just but the strength of it is it's House Democrats asking the governor to move forward on dining and outdoor dining in yellow.
Gotcha. One more or two more before then I turn it over to our stakeholders. As you know, and Ben knows, several of the commercial corridor managers here in Philadelphia have been working with Commerce and some of the other departments to formulate an outdoor seating plan, which we just sent to you today. And some of that will encompass, certainly one of the early stages, we just sent it to the administration, is allow sidewalk seating, even using parking lanes and other areas, and trying to streamline the zoning process. What can we do as certainly an advocacy group such as it is here in Philadelphia to help push these? I think we share the same agenda as how we can push this forward, both to the mayor and higher up.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at it, and then Ben may add to it as well. But what you're doing right now is exactly what you should be doing, and trying to get it to your council members. And it's a well-planned, it's a well-written and well-thought-out message, which, by the way, is something that we'll borrow for other cities. You know, like Harrisburg, for example, downtown Harrisburg, they're already talking about closing 2nd Street. The key is when we know we've got to have social distancing for a while, who knows how long, we have to figure out ways to give restaurants as much additional seating as they can, or they can't survive. You know, you can't survive at a 25% capacity like Georgia's doing right now. You probably can't survive at a 50% capacity forever, maybe for a while. And so we've got to find a way to get more dining. I think it's more seating. I think it's really great that the Philadelphia City Council, at least the staff members, have already indicated to you a willingness to try to work on this. And I think you're going to find most communities are going to be that way. So, so that's what you can be doing. You're the people on the ground in Philadelphia that the council members respect and love. I mean, they love the restaurants. Philadelphia would not be the city it is today were it not for the restaurant community. 7th best food city in the world now, and it's really the resurgence of the city of Philadelphia has been on the backs of the restaurants. So I think that's a story we just need to keep telling. Now, as I mentioned, we have a lobbyist in Philadelphia. It's Frank DiCicco's firm, Andrew Zielinski with Frank. And Frank, as you know, is very beloved in the council and helps us a lot there. And Ben's there on the ground all the time. And Melissa Bova in Harrisburg, our VP of Government Affairs, one of the best in the state in that regard, also works in Philadelphia as needed. So we'll help in every way we can in getting the messaging to the right people and helping with statistics, anything else we need to do on that. As you've probably seen, I've spent a lot of time doing interviews, mostly talking about the devastation this is causing our industry. Not because I want to be negative, but because I need people to understand how serious this is. There's never been anything like this before. My first interview with the Inquirer several months ago, when I said that as many as 30% of the restaurants may not make it back after this, most people thought I was being a doomsday person, and now everybody's saying that's probably conservative, John. So it's so we have to do everything we can to save the 26,000 restaurants in the state, the 7,000 restaurants in Philadelphia, and I think that we just have to keep telling that message. That's what we can do. We've got the statistics, all those kind of things. We can help that way. And then with some connections. Ben, do you want to add something to that?
You know, the one thing that I have found effective as far as getting the message out, there are a lot of articles being written, not just in Philadelphia. Michael Klein from the Inquirer has a few great articles about outdoor dining, as well as Philly Mag, Eater Philly, but all over the country, there's a lot of success stories about outdoor dining and about efforts to allow it and why it's safer and why it helps everybody. So I ask to just share those articles on your social media platforms, whether it be Twitter or Facebook, or that's really important. And then if you're close friends with any of your legislators, tag them in it to get their attention. But the more these success stories are shared, the better chance we have to move this along as fast as possible.
Great. One last thing for me, then I'm going to let everybody else talk. I know PRLA is also doing, I guess, or a part of Carryout PA. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and how that can help our folks here?
You bet. If you're not on the platform already, it's called carryoutpa.com, and it is it's a free service. It's a very slick platform that Ben really spearheaded with I think one of your local partners, Ben, to put together the platform, and it's been and we have about 1,700 restaurants on it now, and the governor's office and the Department of Tourism, the State Department of Tourism, many radio stations and other news outlets are promoting it to try to get people to find carry-out food from. It makes it's a really easy platform. Interestingly, about half the restaurants in the state are still open for carry-out and delivery. Many who had never done carry-out or delivery before. Some of them are doing 30% of their total revenue that they were doing before in carry-out, and they've never done it in the past. So we think this is a good way to help. It's free. It's easy to sign up on. Ben might give you a little bit more detail about that in a second. And the other thing I'll say is when we come out of this, as I said, it's going to be a while, and who knows how long, before we're back to 100% indoor seating from a legal standpoint. And then it's going to be a while before customers are back to 100% indoor seating, even if they're allowed, because of the concern about the virus or the next virus. So I think that those who have adopted some takeout are finding ways to make this a part of their business platform coming out of this, recognizing that they're going to need to maintain that additional revenue. So if you haven't looked at trying to do takeout yet, and you want some assistance on doing a carryout PA is a good place to start. If you're looking at delivery services, Ben also is pretty well wired with delivery services that could help get that set up as well. So that's what carryout PA is.
Got it. Great. And I'm going to now shut up a little and let some of our stakeholders talk. Does anybody have any questions for John or Ben? Skip, I knew you had to have something.
I have questions, Janae.
Oh,
can you hear me?
Janae, you're first. Hi, Janae.
Hi. I have a question. I just when it comes to the side of restaurant things, does this also include bars as well? Do you know if that would be a part of the soft opening of processing?
Yeah. Our opinion is, and this is our opinion, that bars should not be differentiated from restaurants, except that social distancing is probably the best way to control both bars and restaurants. So in other words, if you can social distance within a bar and meet the social distancing requirements, we're not sure why they would be differentiated. Many places have said that bars, or many states have said that bars are not included in the opening plans because they're assuming that at a bar seat that you can't social distance. Actually, you can. And in fact, there's been a device that's been invented throughout this whole thing that one of our restaurant owners in the Lancaster area has actually bought into the company, and it's a portable bar divider. It's a plexiglass bar divider that can sit between patrons, relatively inexpensive, easy to move around. And so what we would push for is that either, and again, this is what we're advocating for, whether it happens, I don't know. We would advocate for proper social distancing, probably based on some CDC guidelines, or as an alternate, an appropriate physical barrier. For example, when you go into a convenience store now to buy something that's still open, or Dunkin' Donuts or something like that, there's a plexiglass shield between you and the cashier. You're standing well within 6 feet of the cashier, but because of the plexiglass shield, that's allowed. So if you wanted to choose in your bar, rather than only using every third seat, to use a plexiglass shield that was an appropriate barrier, we would like that to be your option. The same thing would happen in an all booth restaurant. If you had an all booth restaurant, every other booth would be empty in order to meet social distancing. But if you were willing to put a plexiglass divider between the two, then you could perhaps use every booth. So these are some things we'll be trying to get as much flexibility as possible, and specifically to say there's no reason to exclude bars, just make them comply with the same social distancing you would in a restaurant.
Okay. I have a second follow-up question. Thank you. When it comes to trying to get the expansion of premises with the LCB, if you're already approved to have the sidewalk as a part of your property, and you wanted to extend it to go past that, to go into the parking lanes, is that something that you think that we should maybe reapply for, or just go with what we already have?
John, can I jump
I'm not
in?
sure I understand that question.
Sorry,
Let me
Mark,
jump.
were you saying?
If I could jump in, John, maybe this will clear it up. One of the things, Janae, that we're trying to push, and certainly John and Ben can talk from a broader perspective, is understanding the social distancing requirement and safe seating that we're going to need to have. The outdoor space, what our proposed legislation that we're liking the city to do is, so for example, in your place, we would want you to be able to have table seating on your sidewalks, and also be able to use the parking lanes in front of your geographic area of your property. As long as you cordon it off, make sure that it's safe. So what our proposal is, if it's passed, is to have a pretty quick mechanism for which you can apply and do that. That's what our goal is. Right now, there's, if you wanted to do it under a normal perspective, it would take a city ordinance to do, and it would be very difficult to do.
Right.
Ours, because it's an emergent bill because of these circumstances, we're hoping, and we're certainly getting some positive feedback, surprisingly, especially from streets. John or Ben, I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add to that, but.
The only thing I would add, so what you're really talking about is if you already have an expansion of premises to serve alcohol on sidewalk, we're talking about expanding it even further. And that's really what you're talking about, Mark.
Yes.
And then two other quick things, and one I just thought of, but one would be at least the board members of PLCB have also indicated that to the degree that it helps, they would encourage localities to quickly approve expansion of premises as well. Sometimes between municipals and counties, there is a push-pull between the LCB and them. And if they know that the LCB is already on board with it, that might help. I don't think you're going to have a problem in Philadelphia anyway, but they offered that. And then the second thing I forgot to mention is that this afternoon the Senate will sign the mixed drinks to go legislation, and we hope that the governor will get it signed tonight. And his team indicated that they would expedite the signature, assuming there weren't any problems with the legislation, which I don't think there are. It passed handily both chambers, and the Senate just has to sign it this afternoon. We really appreciate the quick work on part of on part of both the House and the Senate on this bill. What that'll allow you to do is, if you're open now for takeout services, you'll be able to sell mixed drinks to go, which could add some pretty good revenue for you and allow you to move some inventory that you haven't been able to move.
Great. Let me go to Skip. I know Skip had his hand up, and then one of our other tavern owners has a place. So Skip, take it away.
Thank you. Thanks, John, for being here in Senator Parnase's office in Commerce. Ben, we met once before at the event at Fork. And nice to see you as well. Thank you. A quick question about the bill. Does the bill that you're saying you expect to be signed this afternoon, John, will that include any alcohol service or only mixed drinks? Do you know?
It's only mixed drinks. You can already sell beer to go, as you know.
But not bottled wine.
Unless you have a wine expanded permit, you cannot sell bottled wine.
Okay.
And then the drink, and we have, again, if you're not on our daily updates, please send us an email address and get on it, because there's so much information there. For example, there is a infographic on there that explains in 5 easy steps everything you need to know for the mixed drinks to go bill. That's House Bill 327. And then the second thing that's in there is there's a requirement that you post a particular sign somewhere in your premises if you're going to sell mixed drinks to go. It's essentially a consumer warning. And we have the infographic on there too. So all you literally have to do is print it out on your printer and post it to be within the law. So we're trying to give you all the tools you need. So it's, and if you're not on it, you can sign up without even sending us your email address. Just go onto the PRLA coronavirus webpage. Type in PRLA.org and go to the coronavirus webpage. Then there's a place there where you can fill out a form. It'll get you on the daily update. No strings attached, no cost. You'll get everything you need.
Thank you. That's helpful. I happen to be a caterer, not a restaurant, so it's a little bit different for me, but I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I'll mention two other things quickly. One's just a comment for the Restaurant Association. I saw a very interesting article about how one thing that's becoming obvious, but not to everybody, is how thin the margins are in restaurants. And so it would seem to me that the more the Restaurant Association can promote that idea without whining, because it's very easy for people to think that takeout is going to save restaurants in some significant way, when in fact it's really a holding pattern. That advice is worth twice what you're paying for it. But my biggest question is really PPP and anything that you and the other agencies that are on this call can do about it. There was an update this morning from the SBA on it. It's helpful. The biggest question, and it will really apply to restaurants and us as caterers, is the FTE requirement. And in Philadelphia, as long as we're at the stage where we are, even yellow, it's going to be virtually impossible to come anywhere near the FTEs. And so some consideration that gets passed up the line through you for further amendments to that would be really helpful.
Yeah. Skip, that's a really good point. And there were some provisions that the Treasury can make administratively that don't require legislation. They had some clarification that came out last week, as you said, from the SBA, that the Treasury made these decisions. Beyond that, there was a really good piece of news that came out Saturday morning. Congressman Chip Roy from Texas has a bill that he's pushing, which the Speaker of the House, Speaker Pelosi, has already said that she will get to the floor for a vote. He supported the essentially the COVID-4 Act that the Speaker brought forth. So she said she would get this done. And what it is, it's called the PPP Flexibility Act. And it's what it would do, and to your specific point, Skip, is it would do a couple of things relative to the employees. One is it would be loan forgiveness cannot be reduced if rehires, decline offers, or similarly qualified employees cannot be found. This has been part of the problem with it. So what you would do is when you're try to get people to come back to work and they won't come back either for safety reasons or because they are making too much money on unemployment, and you document that, that would help to ensure that you could still get the loan forgiven. The other is the covered period would be extended by 24 weeks to December 31st or December 31st, whichever is longer. And that would be helpful because you wouldn't have to get the employees back to work, the headcount back until then. And you'd have the provision where if you couldn't get them to come back because of they wouldn't take your offer or you couldn't find people, then that would be sufficient to still get it forgiven. It also has some other provisions. It changes it from a 2-year loan to a 5-year loan. It eliminates the 75-25 threshold. So 75%, it says right now they can spend 75%, have to spend 75% on payroll, 25% on a combination of 3 other things, utilities, rent, or mortgage interest. It doesn't broaden the category on the 25%, but it says if you're spending money on any of those 4 things, you can spend it any way you want. And then the last thing it does is it delays the payment of employer payroll taxes. It's a really good piece of legislation. It's a really good start. We also expect there may be some provisions in the so-called COVID-4 when the Senate gets to it. It's been passed by the House, as you know, narrowly passed. When it gets to the Senate, there'll be some provisions put in. There's nobody that you'll ever talk with in Washington right now that doesn't understand that there's a problem with the PPP because we never anticipated, no one ever anticipated what the virus was going to do. So there's definitely a big focus on fixing this. This bill, Chip Roy's bill, could be a game changer and it could move pretty quickly.
Right. So the only other thing, that's great. That's all great. And I realize that everybody's aiming at a target that's moving continually. The other thing I will say is that it'd be great, like for us as people who are involved in events. So clearly, I need people to be able to start holding their weddings again. It's a little bit different than a restaurant situation for it to move to December into December. But of course, the 8-week period for disbursement has to get set aside at the same time.
Yep.
I can have to 24th to bring up my FTEs, but I have to disperse it all in 8 weeks, which in my case ends at the end of June. So that obviously has to be addressed. And I'm sure they realize that.
The whole program would move to 24 weeks or December 31st when you spend the money and also the forgiveness criteria if this bill passes, which, as I said, just the fact that the speaker's on board with it in the House and there's no real landmines for the Senate on this, I would think that this could move.
That would be great. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
You bet.
Thank you. Robbie, you had your hand up?
Yep, thanks. Thanks everyone for leading this. Okay, let's see here. I think that the idea that bars can socially distance is not a feasible thing in any way, shape, or form. Like I own a bar. It's a place where people come to dance. Our business is social engagement, right? So I guess, telling people to go dance in a little circle with a 6-foot radius is not really a thing. So I guess it's kind of a question that has no answer, but let's say that restaurants can go to 50% inside. What do you think is the timeline for like a place for people to come, go to a bar and hang out? Like there's no end for that, correct? Like there's no realistic timeline on that. It's like a cure is the timeline, yeah? So my question is, how are...
John, did you have a comment? I'm sorry, Robbie. John, did you have a comment to that?
Well, on the bar part of it, I don't disagree with y'all, Robbie. I've been in the bar and restaurant business both, and but I also would rather not have bars totally excluded. If you can figure out a way to do some business in a bar, but it's totally excluded and can't open at all, and that's a problem. So we're kind of looking at the lesser of two really big evils. And you're right. There's nobody knows when people are going to come back and fill restaurants and bars again, either on their own or whether the government's going to allow it. And when we had our last conversation, or our conversation with the governor, we talked about a vaccine, and he talked about the next pandemic. So that's the other problem is if
Sure.
people are waiting around for the next pandemic, then we never get back to normal. So you're right. There's no answer to that, but I can tell you why if we had our druthers, we'd rather leave it up to bars to at least have an opportunity to be open in some capacity. That's all.
Okay, okay, thank you. Is the opportunity, like, I see people in public parks everywhere, right? They're socially distanced with like 6 of their friends, right? For, from what I've seen, like, they have like little, like, squads of like 6 to 8 friends, and we hang out with each other. And that's what I see people doing. And it's what I see at public parks, right? So, if I use my off-premise catering license and go set up a stand at a park, is the liquor board going to come and bang me for it? Is that like something that anyone's talked about?
Well, it's
Like
happening.
a hot dog
It's happening now. We see it happening in the cities. People are bringing and setting up stands in neighborhoods. They'll say, I'm going to be in your neighborhood this Sunday, and I'm going to be and pre-order your item and come pick it up. So it's a little bit different than what you're talking about, but takeout is permitted at this point in time. So if you pass all of the other rules that might be required in local zoning and things, I don't see how that would be an issue unless, and this happened initially in Philadelphia, and Ben, you might have the details, I can't remember. Initially in Philadelphia, when restaurants were deemed essential for takeout and delivery, and there was a lot of queuing at some counter service places that caused, I believe, the city strengthened the rules on that. And I don't remember the details on it. Ben, do you remember the details?
It was kind of like a cheesesteak amendment. They didn't want people lining up in front of, Pat's and Gino's and Rita's Water Ice right next to each other, but they were able to, that's why you see like the X's now, like on the ground, so everybody's 6 feet apart. So we passed that stage, but that wasn't an initial concern. Just immediately upon opening up takeout would just be mobs of people, in groups waiting in line. So as long as you have a way to make sure that doesn't happen, you're okay.
Awesome. Another question. I don't know if this is like somewhat on topic, but I'm on the payroll of my bar. I applied for unemployment. I got denied because I have a significant control over daily operations, and I am a significant shareholder. Ergo, it's my fault we're out of business. I said, well, my control is not over the governor. So when I have my denial appeal hearing in 2 days, do you think that's going to be like a reasonable case?
Yeah.
Like, and have other restaurant owners who may be on payroll or on salary at their business gone through this that you know of?
I haven't really taken point on the unemployment like Melissa has, and Ben, I don't know whether you know from dealing with Melissa on this what the answer might be, what the likelihood that this is going to be turned over in appeal.
I think it's really a case by case. I've seen them go both ways, and there wasn't a significant factor one way or the other, why it tilted that way. So, my best of luck to you. But I don't have the answer for you. I'm sorry, Robbie.
No, that's cool. And I guess the last question is this. I've got friends who own restaurants whose business is better than usual. Okay, I have a friend who owns a chicken restaurant, and he said that right now business is like, it's like the NFL season right now for him, because nobody wants to leave. They're all ordering food. Business is up, and he got PPP money on top of that. Okay, meanwhile, my business is shut down, and like, we're all restaurant and bar people here. So, like, my staff reports what they report when they get cash tips. My PP money is less than it could have been. Fine, that's just how it is. I get it. But at the same time, like, it kind of sucks when I see businesses thriving and still getting government money, and I'm over here shut down, and I'm right now halfway through my PPP money, and I can't sit around and like not spend it just in case some act gets passed. So I'm blowing through this money, and I'm kind of hoping that there might be some sort of additional stimulus that goes to like maybe bars, concert venues, something like that, to help us, where it's like we're not open partially, we're shut down. And I was just wondering if there was any information or thoughts.
Yeah. The PPP, I mean, there's a piece of legislation that if it would ever pass at all, might take 3 years to get passed. They passed it in 3 weeks. And then they wrote regulations that usually take 6 months to write in a week. So I'm not defending it, but I'm explaining how it got the way it is. Not just restaurants, there's many businesses that got PPP money that didn't lay off a single employee. And you know, everybody's working from home. So they're just paying the employees, and they would have worked anyway because they're in a high-tech business or whatever. So it's definitely imperfect. I mentioned this at the front of the call, but what would be available to your question about is there more potential relief is the restaurant and food service industry relief and relief fund, which is the #1 item on the National Restaurant Association platform for COVID-4 that we're supporting. It's $240 billion would be available for grants, and we'd be based on a need basis of how businesses were affected by this, restaurants were affected by this, and the administration of it there's a lot of logic behind how it would be administered. I interviewed Sean Kennedy, who's the EVP of the National Restaurant Association for Public Affairs. We work very closely with Sean. Sean's probably one of the best legislative affairs guys out there. He just joined National Restaurant Association 6 months ago. Wasn't very good timing on his part, but he's really the right guy here. He's been through these kind of things before. And in the interview, and you can find it in the, if you go back to the archives for our, it's called PRLA Short Takes. He talks about why this bill could get passed. So I said, well, why would there be a carve out for the restaurant industry? I know why there would be, but explain how you're selling this. There's no industry, and I think this is undisputed right now, there's no industry that was harder hit than the restaurant industry with less direct aid to the industry. Now, airlines got direct aid to help them through this. Restaurant industry did not. They could participate in the PPP program like everyone else, but we were the first shut down. We'll be the last that gets back to normal. And so consequently, there's a really good reason why. And, you know, let's face it, people love restaurants. And it's one thing that legislators can really connect with is not only just restaurants, but restaurant owners. So we think that there's a high likelihood that in COVID-4, let me not say high, but there's a likelihood we can get additional relief, totally unrelated to the PPP. If you got PPP money, good for you. If you need more money to get reopened and get inventory or whatever it takes, that's what this could be used for. It would be essentially not a blank check, but it would be a check that would allow you to spend it for other things, unlike the PPP money, which was almost totally designed for payroll.
Awesome.
So follow, again, on the daily updates, you're going to see action alerts from us. When you click on an action alert, it gets a message to your congressman that says, I'm supportive of this particular bill. And we generated, meaning the industry generated, over 250,000 letters to congressmen when the CARES Act was passed. So we've never generated as an industry more than maybe about 80 or 90,000. And that makes a difference. It makes a difference. The numbers of messages make a difference, particularly when they come right from their constituents.
Thank you, John. As we're getting closer to the end, I want to see if there's anyone else has another question or two before. I wanted to let Marissa Moylan from Senator Farnese's office just give a brief update. Any other questions for John or Ben? John, what is the website so people could come check out what you're doing? Also, I believe it's every Thursday you have a virtual meeting, virtual updates.
We do a Wednesday at 11 a.m. We get an update, or you get an update of all of the things that are happening relative to this from a legislative standpoint and non-legislative. That's at 11 a.m. It's a Zoom update, mostly done by Melissa Bova, our VP of Government Affairs. And then we have every day there's a COVID-19 update, daily update that you get by email. If you're not on that, you can go to PRLA.org and go to the coronavirus page, and on there's a form that you fill out to get the daily update. Very simple form, basically your email address, name, and a few other things. And then that will get things like action alerts when we get this, like the bill right now, Chip Roy's bill. When it gets ready for consideration at the full House, you'll get an action alert. All you do is click on it. It identifies who your congressman is, and it sends a message to them from you that says, I'd like you to support this particular bill, whatever the number is. So it's very easy to do, and it makes a big difference. So PRLA.org, coronavirus page.
Thanks. Marissa, anything to add from a Senate perspective?
Hi, everyone. Good morning or almost afternoon. Yeah, I mean, just, you know, we've been working a lot on the carry out bill and stuff. So with that kind of coming to fruition and you know, hopefully being implemented soon, I know there's going to be a lot of questions and just kind of how to responsibly do everything and you know, so if anybody has any questions on that particularly, or just any issues with the LCB, you can reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat, and you know, just feel free to reach out, and we'll be helping and doing everything that we can.
Thanks, Marissa. Having no further questions, before we get off the phone here, are there any other elected officials or representatives who are on who wanted just to give a brief update? I never like to exclude anybody. Going once, twice. Thank you, everyone. John and Ben, thank you so much. We're lucky to have you all both as great partners and advocates, and we look forward to working with you to get our restaurants and bars and lodging stimulated and thriving again. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks for the opportunity,
great
Mark.
work.
Thanks for having us.